My brother destroyed my gaming PC and my parents laughed. It's just a toy. I took my dad's vintage car keys and sold it to a scrapyard. It was just a car, I said. Now he's mad, but I'm done. Hey Reddit, my younger brother smashed my custom gaming PC that I spent 2 years saving for, and my parents laughed it off as boys being boys. So I sold Dad's precious 1967 Mustang to a scrapyard for $200. Now suddenly, property damage isn't funny anymore. Here's how it all went down. I'm 24 male, working as a dental lab technician in Phoenix. Not glamorous work, but it pays decent. I make crowns, bridges, and dentures. Started as an apprentice right out of high school and worked my way up to senior technician. My brother Damien is 19 and has been the family golden child since birth. Kids never worked a real job, dropped out of community college after 1 semester, and spends his days gaming in our parents' basement while they praise him for finding himself. I moved out at 20, got my own apartment across town, and visit maybe once a week for dinner. That's about all I can handle. My parents, George and Linda, are typical suburban middle-class folks who somehow convince themselves their younger son walks on water while their older son is just there. Dad manages a car parts warehouse. Mom does medical billing from home. The gaming PC becomes relevant because I'd been saving for 2 years to build my dream setup. Custom everything. High-end graphics card, liquid cooling, RGB lighting, triple monitors. Total investment around $3,200. On my salary while paying rent and loans, that's serious money. I built it piece by piece, researching every component obsessively. The finished product was beautiful, with clean cable management and perfect temps. Posted pictures in PC forums and got tons of compliments. Gaming was my main hobby after work. A few hours of competitive shooters or side projects, 3D modeling, programming, video editing. The PC was my creative outlet and stress relief. Here's where the family dynamic gets important. Every time I visited, Damien would beg to use my gaming setup. I'd refuse because the kid has zero respect for property. He's the type who'll leave greasy fingerprints everywhere, spill drinks near electronics, and rage quit by slamming things. My parents always defended him. Why can't you share? You're being selfish. I'd explain Damien had his own setup. PS5, laptop, newer TV than mine. Not exactly suffering, but logic never worked. I was the successful older brother who should be generous. Damien was the baby who needed support. 3 weeks ago, I mentioned I'd be out of town for a work conference in San Diego. 2-day seminar about new 3D printing techniques. I mentioned this at Sunday dinner. Damien's eyes lit up immediately. So your apartment will be empty? Can I crash there? I said no. Damien in my apartment unsupervised? No way. He pushed. Just one night. He'd be quiet. Classic promises from someone who never keeps promises. I held firm. My parents started their usual routine about family, and me being unreasonable. The dinner ended tensely. I left without giving Damien my spare key. 3 days later in San Diego, I got a text from my downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Your brother is at your apartment. My blood went cold. I called her immediately. Saw him letting himself in with a key and friends. Figured you should know. I tried calling Damien. Voicemail. Tried my parents. No answer. Then I checked my security camera app. Damien was there with 2 friends using my gaming PC. They were in my office, drinking, laughing, messing with everything. I called Damien. He finally picked up. Hey man, what's up? Get out of my apartment right now. Chill. Mom gave me the spare key. Mom gave him the key. The emergency key I'd given my parents for actual emergencies. I don't care who gave you a key. Get out now or I'm calling the police. He laughed. You're not going to call the cops on your own brother. Get out now. He hung up on me. I sat there watching the camera feed, called my parents. Dad answered. Did you give Damien my spare key? Long pause. Your mother thought it would be fine. That key was for emergencies. This is an emergency. He needed somewhere to go. I told Dad if Damien wasn't out in 30 minutes, I was calling police. You wouldn't do that to your own brother. Watch me. 20 minutes passed. They were still there. I called the non-emergency line, explained the situation. Operators sent officers for a welfare check. I watched the camera as 2 officers arrived. Damien and friends looked panicked. Officers had them leave and checked the apartment was empty. My phone exploded with messages. Damien, can't believe you called the cops. Mom, how could you do that? Dad, we need to talk. I didn't respond. The seminar ended. I drove straight home around 7 p.m. to check the damage. Apartment was mostly normal. Kitchen clean, bathroom fine. My office, though. Chair adjusted wrong, keyboard moved, greasy fingerprints on my monitor, energy drink cans in the trash. Then I noticed my $300 wireless gaming headset was missing. Called Damien. No answer. Texted, "Where's my headset?" No response. Called my parents. Mom answered saying Damien borrowed it and he'd return it when done. That's theft. Stop being dramatic, it's just a headset. I told her Damien had 24 hours to return it, or I'd file a police report. You're going to get your brother arrested over a headset? Damien showed up the next evening without the headset. Said he couldn't find it and maybe left it at a friend's house. I changed my locks the next day. $120 for a locksmith, but worth the peace of mind. 2 weeks later, Mom called with a peace offering. Family dinner to clear the air. She promised Damien would apologize and return the headset. I showed up Saturday to find Damien gaming, not even acknowledging me. Dinner was awkward. No apology came. I asked about the headset 3 times before Damien said he'd left it in his car and would grab it later. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside in the garage where he keeps his 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback. Highland green like the Bullet car. Bought it in 1995 for $8,000. Restored it himself over years. This car is immaculate and Dad's entire personality. Never driven in rain or winter. Lives under a custom cover with temperature controls. Current value around $75,000. Dad started his speech about family and forgiveness next to this automotive shrine. Damien's young. He makes mistakes. He's 19. Old enough to know better. He's family. You need to let this go. Does family steal from family? He still has my headset. It's just a headset. I'll buy you a new one. There it was again. Just my stuff. Nothing about what I wanted mattered, because Damien's comfort took priority. It's the principle. He broke into my apartment and stole from me. Be the bigger person. You're older, more mature, make good money. You don't need to hold a grudge over small stuff. We went in circles. Eventually, Dad played his trump card about what kind of person I was for not forgiving my brother. That crystallized everything. Every time Damien crossed a line, I was supposed to be the bigger person. His bad behavior was never the problem. My reaction was, I was done, left without saying goodbye. Damien never apologized. Parents looked disappointed. Later that night, Damien texted, "Stop being such a baby about this. It's just gaming stuff." That's when I decided they needed to learn what just stuff really meant. Dad's Mustang keys lived on a hook by the garage door. I knew this because I'd seen them there 1,000 times growing up. He kept the car keys separate from his daily driver keys, labeled with a vintage Ford keychain. Sunday morning, I drove to my parents' house at 6 a.m., early enough that everyone would be asleep. Let myself in through the garage side door. That lock hadn't changed since I was a teenager, and I still had my old key. The Mustang sat there under its cover. I pulled the cover off carefully, folded it, and set it on Dad's workbench. Grabbed the keys from the hook. The engine started with that beautiful 390 V8 rumble that probably woke the neighborhood. I let it warm up for a minute because I'm not a monster. Didn't want to damage the engine by revving it cold. Then I drove it out of the garage, down the driveway, and headed across town to Ace Auto Salvage. Ace Auto is where the lab sends old equipment for scrap metal recycling. The owner, Raymond, is this gruff 50-something who doesn't ask many questions. Pulled up at 7:15 a.m., just as they were opening. Raymond came out looking surprised to see the Mustang. "That's a nice car. What are you doing here with it? Want to sell it for scrap?" He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You want to scrap a 67 Mustang Fastback? Kid, that car's worth real money. Like, a lot of money. I'll give you scrap weight, but you'd get way more selling it properly. We're talking 50, 60 grand to the right buyer. Not interested in selling it properly. How much for scrap?" Raymond walked around the car slowly, clearly conflicted between his business sense and whatever code of ethics salvage yard owners have about destroying classics. He ran his hand along the fender, shook his head. "Look, I'll give you $200 for scrap weight, but I'm telling you right now that's a terrible deal. This is a crime against automotive history. $200 works." He made me sign paperwork confirming I owned the vehicle and had the right to sell it. I signed my dad's name without hesitation. If Damien could steal from me without consequences, I could forge a signature without guilt. Raymond counted out $200 in cash, handed me a receipt, and I walked away from Dad's pride and joy, sitting in a salvage yard waiting to be dismantled. Caught an Uber home and went back to bed. Slept better than I had in weeks. My phone started ringing around 9 a.m. Ignored it. Then more calls. Text messages piling up. I let them accumulate for a few hours before finally checking. 48 missed calls. 67 text messages. "Dad, where is my car?" "Dad, what did you do?" "Dad, call me right now." "Mom, Your father's car is missing. Do you know anything about this? Mom. This isn't funny. Call us immediately. Damien. Dude, did you take Dad's Mustang? He's losing his mind. More messages in similar veins. Increasingly frantic. Apparently, they'd called the police to report the car stolen, then checked their security camera and saw me taking it. I waited until noon before responding to Dad's most recent message with a simple, "It's just a car." My phone rang immediately. Dad, absolutely losing his mind. "What did you do with my car?" "Sold it." Silence. Then an inhuman sound somewhere between a scream and a howl. "You sold my car? My car? Where is it?" "Scrapyard. Got $200 for it." I could hear Mom in the background asking what was happening. Dad must have put me on speaker because suddenly her voice came through clear. "You sold your father's car to a scrapyard? Have you lost your mind?" "Nope. Just wanted to teach everyone a lesson about respecting other people's property." Dad was hyperventilating. "That car is worth $75,000. You sold it for $200? Well, yeah. It's just a car. Just metal and parts. Nothing to get worked up about." The irony was completely lost on him. "You destroyed a classic car. Do you understand what you've done?" "About as much as you understood when Damien broke into my apartment and stole my stuff. Remember? It was just gaming stuff. Just a toy. Nothing important." Silence again as the parallel hit them. Mom recovered first. "This is completely different. That car was irreplaceable. It was your father's dream car. And my gaming PC was 2 years of saving and work. But apparently that didn't matter because it was just toys." "You can rebuild a computer!" Dad shouted. "I can't rebuild that car." "Sure you can. You did it once already. Just find another '67 Mustang and restore it. Should only take you about 15 years and every weekend like last time. Where is the car right now?" I gave him the address of Ace Auto Salvage. "Ask for Raymond. Nice guy. Gave me a fair price." Hung up and blocked both their numbers. The aftermath was nuclear. Dad showed up at the salvage yard within the hour. Raymond later told me the whole story. Apparently, Dad arrived screaming about stolen property and demanding his car back. Raymond showed him the signed paperwork. Dad insisted the signature was forged, but couldn't prove it. His name was on the title. The signature matched reasonably well, and Raymond had no reason to suspect fraud. The Mustang was already being processed for parts when Dad arrived. They drained the fluids, removed the engine, and started cutting up the body for scrap metal. The thing about salvage yards, once they buy a car, they move fast. Time is money, and storage space is limited. Dad threatened to sue Raymond, threatened to call the police, threatened everything he could think of. Raymond just shrugged and showed him the bill of sale again. Legal transaction, proper paperwork, nothing he could do about seller's remorse. Then Dad tried to buy it back. Offered Raymond $5,000 cash right there. Raymond said he'd already sold the engine to a guy who rebuilds vintage motors. The interior was stripped and sold to an upholstery guy. The body panels were in the crusher. Nothing left to buy back. Dad apparently sat down in the dirt and cried. A 55-year-old man crying in a salvage yard over a car that was just metal and parts. Mom called from a different number I hadn't blocked yet. I answered. "I hope you're happy. Your father is devastated. Absolutely devastated." Interesting. When Damien devastated me by violating my home and stealing my property, you told me to get over it. Those situations aren't comparable. They're exactly comparable. Damien destroyed something I worked hard for and valued deeply. I destroyed something Dad worked hard for and valued deeply. Only difference is you care when it happens to Dad. You're being vindictive and cruel. Nope, I'm being exactly as considerate as you taught Damien to be. This is learned behavior. She tried the family guilt angle. How could I do this to my own father? Didn't I care about him at all? This would destroy our relationship forever. I pointed out that relationship was already destroyed when they gave Damien my key to break into my apartment. This was just me making the destruction official. "You need to make this right," Mom demanded. "How?" "The car is gone. Cut up for parts. Nothing I can do about it now. But hey, Dad can always get another one. They made lots of '67 Mustangs. I'm sure he can find one for sale somewhere. Those cars cost a fortune now. Then maybe he shouldn't have raised a son who doesn't respect other people's property. Seems like a parenting failure to me." She hung up. I blocked that number too. My cousin Felicia called later that day. She'd apparently heard about the whole situation through the family grapevine and wanted to check in. "So you really scrapped Uncle George's Mustang?" "Yep, that's hardcore. I'm honestly impressed." Felicia had always been the black sheep of the family for pushing back against their nonsense. She'd moved to Colorado years ago, partly to escape family drama. Want to know the best part? I told her about Damien breaking in, the stolen headset, and how mom and dad had dismissed everything as me being dramatic over just gaming stuff. Oh man, I bet Uncle George is losing his mind. Completely. Apparently he cried at the salvage yard. Felicia laughed. Good. Maybe this'll teach them something about consequences. We talked for a while about family dynamics and why some parents pick favorites. She'd dealt with similar stuff growing up. Her younger brother could do no wrong while she was constantly criticized for not being family-oriented enough. The thing about families like ours, Felicia said, is they only understand boundaries when you enforce them with consequences. You tried talking, you tried explaining, you tried setting rules. They ignored all of it, so you made them feel what it's like to have something valuable destroyed. Think they learned anything? Probably not, but at least you're not a doormat anymore. She had a point. For years I'd been swallowing their favoritism and disrespect, telling myself it wasn't worth fighting about. Being the bigger person, letting things slide, all that accomplished was teaching them they could walk all over me without pushback. The police did eventually show up at my apartment. 2 officers asking about the car situation. I explained that yes, I'd taken the car and sold it to a salvage yard. Showed them the text messages from Damien bragging about breaking into my apartment. Showed them the camera footage of him and his friends using my stuff. Explained how my parents had given him unauthorized access to my home. So this is a family dispute? The older officer said. More like retaliation for property violations that my family refused to take seriously. The officers exchanged looks. They'd clearly seen this type of situation before. Look, technically you could be charged with auto theft, but given the family relationship and the circumstances, we'd rather you all handle this civilly. My family doesn't do civil. They do enablement and favoritism. The younger officer almost smiled at that. Still, might want to consider making some kind of restitution before your dad decides to press charges. He can press charges if he wants. I'll press charges for Damien breaking into my apartment and stealing my headset. We can both explain to a judge why we think our property matters more than the other person's. They took notes and left. Said they'd file a report, but probably nothing would come of it unless Dad formally pressed charges, which would open up the whole can of worms about Damien's break-in. Next few days were weird. I went to work like normal, came home like normal, but this tension hung over everything, knowing my family was probably plotting something. Sure enough, Damien showed up at my apartment Wednesday evening. Didn't knock, just started pounding on the door and yelling, "Open up! We need to talk!" I watched through the peephole as he continued making a scene in the hallway. Mrs. Chen from downstairs stuck her head out to see what was happening. "You screwed everything up!" Damien yelled at my door. "Dad's completely broken over this. How could you do that to him?" I opened the door. Same way you could break into my apartment. Just didn't think about consequences. That's not the same thing at all. Sure it is. You violated my property. I violated Dad's property. Basic cause and effect. His face was red with anger. Dad never did anything to you. His car was innocent. And my gaming PC was innocent when you used it without permission. My apartment was innocent when you broke in. Funny how you only care about property rights when it's not your property being violated. You're insane. You know that? Actually insane. Or maybe I'm just done being the family doormat. Damien tried pushing past me into my apartment. I blocked him. You're not coming in. You don't live here and you're not welcome. I just want to talk. Then talk from the hallway where Mrs. Chen can call the cops if you get violent. He noticed her watching and calmed down slightly. Look, Dad's threatening to disown you. Mom's not sleeping. This is tearing the family apart. Family was already torn apart. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. If you just apologize and help pay for another car? I laughed. Why would I do that? You never apologized for breaking in. You never returned my headset. You never faced any consequences for violating my space. But somehow I'm supposed to apologize and pay for destroying Dad's toy? It wasn't a toy. It was a classic car worth serious money. And my gaming PC wasn't a toy either. It was 2 years of work and serious money to me. But you called it just gaming stuff. So Dad's car is just car stuff. Damien looked genuinely confused. Like he couldn't understand why I wasn't seeing his point. That's the thing about golden children. They're so used to the world revolving around them that they can't comprehend other people having legitimate grievances. You're being petty, he finally said. Yep, learned it from watching you. He stood there for another minute trying to think of something to say, then left. I closed the door and went back to my normal evening routine. The family went radio silent for about 2 weeks. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. I figured they were either done with me or plotting something elaborate. Then I got a Facebook message from Dad. Not his usual profile. He'd created a new account just to contact me since I'd blocked his regular one. We need to meet. Family mediator. Neutral location. This has gone too far. I was skeptical, but curious. Agreed to meet at a coffee shop on Saturday afternoon. Showed up to find Dad, Mom, and some woman in a professional blazer sitting at a corner table. The woman introduced herself as Patricia, a family counselor specializing in conflict resolution. This would be interesting. Patricia started with the standard mediator speech about safe spaces, respect, and working toward mutual understanding. Then she asked Dad to explain his perspective. Dad launched into a 15-minute speech about the Mustang, how he'd bought it in 1995, restored it piece by piece, how it represented years of work and passion, how devastating it was to see his life's hobby destroyed by his own son out of spite. Patricia nodded sympathetically and took notes. Then she turned to me. And your perspective? I laid out everything. Damien breaking into my apartment, using a key my parents gave him without permission. The violation of my privacy and property. The stolen headset that was never returned. How my parents dismissed all of it as me being dramatic over just gaming stuff. I explained to them that my gaming PC represented 2 years of saving and work, that it mattered to me the same way Dad's car mattered to him. They told me to get over it because it was just toys. So I applied their logic to Dad's car. Just metal and parts. Nothing to get worked up about. Patricia asked if I understood the difference in monetary value between a gaming PC and a classic Mustang. Absolutely. Dad's car was worth about $75,000. My PC was worth about $3,200. But the principle is the same. Someone violated property that took time and effort to build. The dollar amount doesn't change that it's wrong. Dad jumped in. You can build another computer. I can't get that car back. You can buy another '67 Mustang and restore it. Probably take 15 years like last time, but it's possible. Same effort you're asking me to put into replacing my violated property. Patricia tried redirecting. Let's focus on moving forward rather than who was more wronged. What would resolution look like for each of you? Dad wanted me to pay for a replacement Mustang. Said he'd seen similar models for sale between $60,000 to $80,000, depending on condition. If I couldn't pay the full amount immediately, we could work out a payment plan. And what consequences will Damien face for breaking into my apartment? I asked. Mom bristled. Damien already apologized. No, he didn't. He never apologized even once. He called me a baby and said I was being dramatic. Well, he's sorry now. Where is he? Why isn't he here apologizing in person? Silence. Apparently they hadn't even told Damien about this meeting because they knew he wouldn't apologize. Patricia asked what I wanted as resolution. I want acknowledgement that Damien violated my property the same way I violated Dad's. I want equal consequences applied. If I have to pay $75,000 for the car, Damien has to pay $3,200 for my PC. And he returns my headset or pays $300 to replace it. Plus, he apologizes for breaking in, and you apologize for giving him access to my apartment. Dad's face turned purple. That's not the same thing at all. Why not? Because your computer is replaceable. My car was one of a kind. Your car was one of 72,000 Mustang Fastbacks, built in 1967. My custom PC build was literally one of a kind. I designed and built it myself. Nobody else has the exact same configuration, so actually mine was more unique. Patricia tried mediating, but it was pointless. Dad wanted me to pay for his car without Damien facing any consequences. I wanted equal treatment. Neither of us would budge. The meeting ended with nothing resolved. Dad called me spiteful and vindictive. I called him a hypocrite who only cared about property when it was his own. Mom cried. Patricia looked tired. As we left, I heard Dad tell Patricia that he'd raised an ungrateful son who destroyed his most prized possession out of jealousy and spite. That stung for about 30 seconds. Then I remembered watching Damien break into my apartment on camera while my parents dismissed my concerns. The sting faded pretty quick. Month 3 after the car incident, things settled into a new normal. I was officially estranged from my parents and Damien. They'd stopped trying to contact me. I'd stopped caring what they thought. Work was going well. Got promoted to lead technician with a raise, which was nice. Used some of the extra money to build a new gaming PC. Even better specs than the last one. This time, I kept the security camera running 24/7 and installed a smart lock that sent alerts to my phone whenever someone tried to use a key. Mrs. Chen told me she saw Damien trying to get into my apartment twice. Once he tried his old key in the new lock, then stood there looking confused when it didn't work. Second time, he actually tried to jimmy the door with a credit card, like some amateur burglar. She called the building manager both times, and he got trespassed from the property. According to Felicia, who still had contact with that side of the family, Dad had become obsessed with finding another Mustang to restore. He'd apparently taken out a loan for $30,000 to buy a project car that needed significant work. Mom was furious about the debt, but couldn't stop him. He's having a whole midlife crisis over this, Felicia reported during one of our weekly calls. Keeps talking about teaching you a lesson and proving he can rebuild. Good for him. Maybe it'll keep him busy enough to stop enabling Damien. Oh, about Damien, he got a job. No way. Yep, bagging groceries at the store near their house. Apparently they cut off his allowance to help pay for the Mustang, so he had to find work. That was the first consequence Damien had faced for anything in his entire life. Got a job because his parents needed money for something other than babying him. How's he handling actual work? According to my mom, he hates it and complains constantly. But he's been there 3 weeks, so maybe it'll stick. We laughed about the image of Damien in a grocery store uniform, finally experiencing what the rest of us learned at 16. The next development came from an unexpected source. Raymond from the salvage yard called me. Hey, so remember that Mustang you brought in? Yeah? Your dad's been calling me every week asking about parts. Wants to know if I kept anything before scrapping it. Been pretty persistent. What did you tell him? Truth, that we sold the engine, stripped the interior, crushed the body. But he keeps asking like maybe I'm hiding a fender in the back or something. Sorry he's bothering you. Nah, it's fine. Actually calling because I thought you should know he's been telling people in the car community that you stole his vehicle. Some of the guys in the Mustang Club are apparently pretty worked up about it. Worked up how? Nothing serious, just old dudes griping about ungrateful kids. But figured you'd want a heads up in case any of them try contacting you. I thanked Raymond and hung up. Dad was out there playing victim to his car buddies, probably leaving out the whole part about Damien breaking into my apartment and my parents enabling it. Sure enough, a few days later I got a Facebook message from some guy named Rick, who claimed to be in Dad's Mustang Club. You should be ashamed of yourself. Your father spent decades on that car, and you destroyed it out of spite. There's a special place in hell for people like you. I replied, ask him about the time his other son broke into my apartment, using keys my parents gave him without permission. Ask him why property only matters when it's his property. Rick never responded, but I got blocked pretty quick. This happened a few more times. Random middle-aged car guys sending me messages about respecting classics and family and tradition. Each time I gave them the full story. Some apologized. Most just stopped messaging. The vindication came from an unexpected place. I got an email from my former dentist, Dr. Patel. He'd retired last year, but apparently still kept tabs on industry news and former employees. Saw your name mentioned in a dental lab forum. Someone was asking about your work quality. Wanted you to know I gave you a glowing recommendation. You always did excellent work, and I was lucky to have you at my practice. Hope things are going well. That email hit different. Here was someone who'd actually valued my work and skills. No family obligation required. Just professional respect based on merit. Made me realize how much of my self-worth had been tied up in trying to earn my parents' approval and recognition. Approval that would never come because I wasn't Damien. Started seeing things clearer after that. The family dynamics I'd normalized for years were actually pretty messed up. Damien got away with everything because they saw him as needing help and support. I got held to higher standards because they saw me as capable and self-sufficient. Classic case of punishing competence and rewarding helplessness. Around month 4, I got a letter in the mail. Actual physical letter, which was weird enough that I almost threw it away thinking it was junk mail. It was from Mom, handwritten on her fancy stationery. The letter was 6 pages of emotional manipulation, masquerading as a heartfelt apology. She was sorry things had gotten so out of hand. She understood I felt hurt, but family was important, and we needed to find a way to move past this. Then came the real ask. Dad's birthday was coming up, and it would mean the world to him if I attended. Could we please put aside our differences for one day to celebrate as a family? The letter never acknowledged what actually happened, never admitted that giving Damien my key was wrong, never recognized that dismissing my property as just gaming stuff while mourning Dad's car as irreplaceable was hypocritical. Just surface-level sorry you're upset language, designed to make her feel better about the situation without actually addressing the problems. I didn't respond. Dad's birthday came and went. Felicia told me they'd had a small party at the house, just close family. Dad apparently spent most of the evening in the garage working on his new Mustang project and complaining about ungrateful children. Mom asked me if I'd talk to you, Felicia said. I told her, yeah, we talk every week. She got weird about it. Asked if I was taking sides. What did you say? That there weren't sides, just consequences for actions. She didn't like that. The family started taking their frustration out on Felicia after that, calling her less, excluding her from events, making pointed comments about loyalty, standard manipulation tactics for anyone who doesn't fall in line. I'm used to it, Felicia said. They pulled the same thing when I moved to Colorado. You're not really family unless you're supporting the current narrative. That was the thing about families like ours. Belonging was conditional, based on compliance and blind loyalty, rather than actual bonds. By month 6, I'd fully adjusted to life without them. Holidays became easier. I'd either work or spend time with friends who were also estranged from family. Turns out lots of people have dysfunctional families they've distanced themselves from. We formed our own makeshift holiday group, which was honestly more fun than obligatory family dinners ever were. Built a good friend group through work and hobbies. People who valued me for me, not for what I could provide or how I compared to a sibling. Got really into rock climbing and joined a gym where everyone was supportive and drama-free. Started seeing someone, Julie, a dental hygienist I met through work connections. Told her about the family situation early on because I didn't want any surprises. So you scrapped your dad's vintage Mustang because your brother broke into your apartment? Essentially, yeah. She thought about it. That's pretty ruthless. But I get it. My brother used to steal my stuff constantly, and my parents always made excuses for him. If I'd had the nerve to do what you did, maybe he would have learned boundaries earlier. Having someone understand without judgment was refreshing. Julie got that sometimes you have to do extreme things to make a point when people refuse to listen to reasonable requests. We'd been dating about 2 months when I got another surprise visit. This time from Damien, showing up at the rock climbing gym where I was bouldering with friends. He walked in looking uncomfortable in the athletic environment, clearly out of his element. Found me between climbs and asked to talk privately. We went outside to the parking lot. Look, I know we haven't talked in a while, he started. 6 months. It's been 6 months. Right. So I wanted to apologize. For real this time. For breaking into your apartment and taking your headset. That was wrong. I waited. There had to be more. Mom and Dad are making me do this, he admitted. Said they won't help pay my car insurance unless I apologize to you and try to fix things. There it was. Not a genuine apology, just another manipulation tactic from parents using financial leverage to force a reconciliation. So you're not actually sorry. You're just being forced to pretend you're sorry to keep getting money from them. I mean, I am sorry it caused such a huge issue. I didn't think you'd actually scrap Dad's car over it. That's not an apology. That's you being sorry about consequences, not sorry about actions. Damien looked frustrated. What do you want me to say? That I'm a terrible person? That I ruined everything? Fine, I'm terrible and I ruined everything. Happy now? Still not an apology. Forget it. I tried. You're just going to stay mad forever. Because you're holding a grudge. Nope, I'm not mad. I just don't have any interest in having a relationship with you or our parents. You all taught me that property and boundaries don't matter unless they're yours. So I applied that lesson. Now I'm living my life without the constant drama and manipulation. It's actually pretty great. Damien looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Finally, he just said, Dad's really messed up about the car. Like, really bad. He spent all his money trying to rebuild one and it's still not the same. Good. Maybe he'll understand how I felt watching you break into my apartment and use my stuff. It's not the same. It's exactly the same. The only difference is whose property got violated. When it was mine, nobody cared. When it was Dad's, suddenly property is sacred. Damien left without another word. I went back inside and finished my climbing session. Julie asked if everything was okay, and I told her it was. Just family trying to manipulate their way back into my life. You staying strong? She asked. Yeah. They haven't figured out that I don't need them anymore. Maybe they never will. Last I heard through Felicia, Dad finally finished his Mustang rebuild. Took him 8 months and about $45,000 total. The car looked good in photos, but it wasn't the same as his original. Different VIN, different history, just another restored Mustang instead of the one he'd owned for decades. Mom apparently throws it in his face during arguments. How much the project cost, how it's his fault for raising a vindictive son, how they had to take money from retirement savings to finish it. Damien still works at the grocery store but got promoted to assistant manager. Apparently, he's decent at the job when people hold him accountable. Who knew actual consequences could lead to growth? As for me, I'm doing better than ever. Got another promotion at work. Julie and I moved in together, building a life that's mine, free from family obligation and toxic dynamics. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.